Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is TJ Bradley. I'm the Vice President of the African American Studies Club, and I'm here today to introduce our speaker for this morning, who is Mr. Henry Hicks, who is a professional and the CEO of the National Museum for African American Music. Henry Hicks' professional experiences have included work in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors, where he is focused on building enterprises as a consultant, banker, investor, and now the president and CEO at the National Museum of African American Music. His relationship with the project started in 2010 when he began serving on the museum's board before becoming the CEO in 2013. From traditional African drum beats to modern hip hop, the 56,000 square foot experimental museum will highlight the many contributions African Americans have made to American music and culture today. In 1998, Henry was appointed by President Clinton to be a White House Fellow. In this capacity, he was a senior advisor to the CEO of the Corporation for National and Community Service and launched the AmeriCorps Promise Fellows program on behalf of the President and the General Colin Powell. Henry is a member of the Board of Directors for Leadership Nashville, USN, and Nashville Center for Nonprofit Management. He served previously on the Board of Directors for the National Convention and Visitation Corporation, and United Therapeutics Corporation, where he served on the Audit and the Compensation Committees. The son of a preacher, he grew up in the church where he developed a passion for music. He explored his talents as a member of the Morehouse College Glee Club, where he earned a scholarship to sing and completed a Bachelor's of Arts degree in marketing. After graduating from Morehouse, Henry continued his education to earn a Master's of Business from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. His musical passion is a vital asset at the National Museum of African American Music, where he combines his financial acumen with the fervor of a music scholar and fan. Now please join me in welcoming the CEO of the National Museum of African American Music, Mr. Henry Hicks.
It gives me immense pleasure to say that the National Museum of African American Music is finally complete and ready to open to the public.
We now have a place where young black children can see people who look like them, venerated and celebrated as the icons they are.
NAMAM is the personification of One Nation Under a Groove. This is a place for everyone, where we want people from all walks of life to come to learn and play, and where we can celebrate our common humanity. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody this morning? All right, it is a pleasure for me to be here with you all this afternoon, and what a privilege to be here to hear these young men speak and this band play and the folks recite Maya Angelou's poetry, so I'm really inspired to be here. I'm glad to be here with you all. I'm glad we showed that video before we got started. I thought that rather than talk a whole lot more about me and exactly sort of how the museum got here, I thought I would talk a little bit more instead about so what? Why? Why is it important to build a place like this? Even as we come to the close of Black History Month, I wondered this morning as I was thinking about this, just why? What difference does it make? And so when I thought about that, I came up with really kind of three answers. The first is we need role models. So I know that one of the tenets here at MBA is that it's important to be well-rounded and to be athletic. So everybody here I know is involved in athletics in some way. And how many of you all have sports heroes that you look up to and that you admire, or that you really are kind of fascinated with their work ethic and what they do? Well, that's what a role model is. And without them and because of them, we aspire to do more. We aspire to do better. So what you may not realize is that 85% of the kids who attend public schools in Nashville are black and brown. And 90% of those kids are low income, as defined by accepting free and reduced lunch at school. So role models are important. But until our museum was built, there was really no cultural institution in the city that suggested that black and brown folks in Middle Tennessee had really done much of anything or contributed much of anything. Those kids will grow up just like you all to run and to lead our city's government, our city's businesses. And so without a place like the National Museum of African American Music that we call NAMAM, there are precious few role models for our kids in our city. The second reason that comes to mind for me is that together we are stronger than if we are apart. One of the things that I hope that you all learn in history class here is that in 1967, the federal government decided to build Interstate 40 right through North Nashville, the Jefferson Street community, which was not only the city's rich and very vibrant African American community, but it was also a business community and a music community in our city. But I-40 went right through it and tore it apart. It was a racist decision. It decimated homes and families and businesses. It forever reshaped our city. And it created an environment where African Americans in Nashville, who represent more than 28% of the city's population, felt unwelcome, isolated, and not able to move around their city and succeed as easily as others. So the future of our city requires that everybody here in Nashville feel welcome, that everybody feel like they have a place at the table. And so NAMAM helps us to achieve that. The third reason I think the museum is important is because accurate history is important. So, for example, when I was a kid, when I was a little younger than you guys are, I was taught in school that in 1492, Columbus discovered America. Today, of course, we know that's not true. Indigenous people were here well before Columbus, and even Africans were in North America well before Columbus. The same is true of music. We like what we like, but we may not really consider often where jazz or country or rock and roll or even hip-hop music comes from. We may not think about that. It's my music. It's your music. You like it because you like it. It must have come from your culture. It must have come from wherever you came from. It's yours. The problem is that that's not necessarily the truth. Our own perspective, our own perception sometimes blurs the truth. And one of the things that we know if you pay attention to the Grammys or the Oscars, or maybe have gone to visit or seen the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, is that those organizations, those institutions have historically marginalized African Americans and not honoring them the way that they should be, not providing them with the credit that they deserve for their artistry. And so we want to make sure that we clear up that history. We want to tell history in an accurate way. We want to welcome and be able to provide honor and dignity to those artists that we love. The young man was talking about J. Cole earlier. We need to make sure an artist like J. Cole gets his props. And so this is a place that does that. But it's important that we do that without excluding anyone. So our objective at our museum is not to push people out, it's to bring people in. And in fact, one of the ways that we do that is right as you walk in the front door of the museum that I hope all of you have been to visit. And if you haven't, I hope you'll come soon. We had a piece of art commissioned that's called the One Nation Under a Groove box set. And we hung it right over the front entrance of the museum. Because it is your music, and it is my music. It's our music, it's American music, and it's a part of everyone's story. So our tagline at the museum is One Nation Under a Groove. Now that's a 1978 Parliament Funkadelic song. The album that song is on is almost as good as Stevie Wonder's song It's in the Key of Life that we heard a little bit from earlier today. And if you don't have that album on your playlist, I would encourage you to get both of them. But that song was released following the Vietnam War and at the tail end of the Civil Rights Movement in 1978. Seems like forever ago for you all, but I was a kid running around playing basketball and tennis with my friends in Washington, D.C. at that time. And what George Clinton and the folks in the Parliament band were trying to tell us was to get it together, to come together, to be one nation, not just indivisible with liberty and justice for most, but to come together and be one nation under a groove. Let's use the music to come together. Let's use the music to build a stronger nation. Let's use the music to build a stronger Nashville. Let's use the music to build a stronger MBA. And that's why this cool museum is so important. Thank you all for having me today. I'm delighted to be here.